You have to truly believe in the magic.
Hey, Magic fans, and welcome to this episode of the podcast of the Orlando Magic UK. Penny for your thoughts. Today, we're going to be talking about all things schedule release. I'm joined, as always, by the three Caballeros. G, fresh back from holiday. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, thank you, mate. Yeah, I just come back this afternoon, so apologies I've missed the last couple of podcasts. But yeah, good time away, thank you. A bit tired now, drive home, tired kids, unpacking, you know how it is. But hey, I want to ask you something. Have you got your Welsh jersey packed for tomorrow, my friend?
Right. I'm being asked by various people who I'm supporting. For those that don't know, I'm coming down to Cardiff tomorrow for the Wales-South Africa Rugby International. I've got a lot of friends who are saying I've got to support the South Africans. I've got a lot of friends, including yourself, Mr. Jones, who are saying I have to be Welsh. I'm going to be entirely neutral and enjoy the experience of visiting the Principality Stadium, which I've not been to before.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh,
I'm
good
looking
man.
forward to it, mate. Looking forward to it.
You'll have a fantastic time, buddy.
It will be excellent. Really looking forward to it. Gary, how are you, my friend?
Not too bad. It's my sister's birthday today, and she got a slice of that key lime pie that you might have sampled,
That
Mr. Bagan.
thing was so good. That thing was so good. You are welcome down at my house anytime if that is your visiting entrance fee. That was so good.
G got a key ring, and you got a key lime pie.
I'm happy with that ratio there. That's good, mate. That's very good. And happy birthday to the sis, mate.
Yeah, man. She had a good day.
Mr. Clark, how's you?
I'm doing well, mate. Make sure that you carry a sheep under your arm tomorrow. You'll fit right in. And we know, Paul, you got to stay away
Inflatable
from
daffodil.
You got to stay away from the real ones. We know what you're.
Absolutely, yes. With my allergy to the sap, yes, I shall be keeping well away from those. For those listening and watching this episode, if at any point I sound a little like Porky Pig with it's I have a condition called a hemiplegic migraine. I've had one today. It takes my speech and it makes my thought process slow. So as I'm speaking, sometimes I'm very conscious that I'll be with a surname like Bacon. I suppose it's entirely appropriate that I sound like Porky Pig. So there we go. And that you know how the episode's signing off. Right. Before we get into it, I'm going to do a quick plug. Support today's episode by shopping with Fanatics UK and NBA Store Europe using the links in the description of our podcast and the website orlandomagicuk.com. You'll find the latest sports merchandise, including NBA, NFL, MLB, football, and Formula One, and more. You can get 10% off your entire order by using our code MAGICUK10 at the checkout. May not be the best offer available. There will be others, and some exclusions apply, but it's better than nothing. And if you're looking for some different Orlando Magic merchandise, then head to our own online store, magicfansapparel.tmail.com. Also, the links are on the podcast and off the website, and you'll find one or two different bits there. It just helps us do what we do. So if you have bought anything or been shopping through any of those links, thank you. We genuinely appreciate it. Let's get into it, guys, because we've got a lot to talk about. It is entirely going to be about the Magic schedule release. This week's seen the Magic regular season and in-season tournament schedule drop. And it's fair to say that I think everyone's in agreement. It looks a tough one. My first reaction was that the schedule gods looked and thought, Magic fans, fancy your chances, do you? Have this. Because that's how it looked. It's not kind at all. We have a total of 15 back-to-backs. So that's 30 games we play on consecutive games. 7 away to away. 1 away to home. And 3 away to travel. Home to away. Gary, what's your thoughts on the back-to-back situation?
My view is on any schedule that you've got to play everyone. So when I looked at it first, I kind of had the same reaction where I went, that's a bit of a dicey. There's some dicey spells in there, but I think with a back-to-back, I do think we have depth in our squad now. So we've got the guard rotation. We've obviously strengthened that through the draft. So maybe this is a chance for players like our draft picks, to say, okay, you're going to get a few more minutes on the second night of a back-to-back, and we can be able to play a little box a little bit clever. We can rotate Jonathan Isaac. Maybe we'll look at it and we'll see more of GI playing minutes at the 5, perhaps. And if Wendell's going to have any injury flare-ups, maybe that's something where Jonathan Isaac makes his claim to get back into the starting lineup. But I really think it's a young squad. We can experiment, enthusiasm, recovery time should be quicker with young players. It's not like we've got Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the team where they seem to be play one or the other. A lot of our players should be able to do back-to-backs just by their sheer youth. We all know when you're younger you could go and play, you could last that little bit longer. My real concern, if anything, was I know when I bring the schedule up, my phone converts it to UK times automatically, and we've got 3 where it's due to American timing, but it comes off on the UK ones as 3 on the bounce.
Okay, yeah.
So it converts when we play the Raptors, the Nuggets, and the Celtics on the UK time. It shows up as the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of November, and it does the same 13th, 14th, and 15th of January with Miami, OKC, and New York, where the time differences kick in and stuff. So I think that could be pretty draining, where you've got some testing teams like Nuggets and Celtics together is hard. And I think also when you're looking at it, you've got a young team, OKC, sandwiched in between 2 playoff hardened teams in Miami and the New York Knicks. So that was my 2 flare points, November and January with the schedules. But overall, you just got to play everybody. Let's be positive and let's think about our young guys in the squad.
That's an interesting take about using the depth that we have and the youth being in our advantage on that. Yeah, I like that, mate. That's interesting. So, Mikey, I'm going to talk to you about the longest road trip, 5 games in 9 days, January the 29th to February the 6th. What's your thoughts on that?
I quite like it, if I'm honest. I mean, the first half of the schedule is not doing us any favours. A 5-game or a 5-game road trip's tough enough as it is, but you're playing Dallas. Let's be honest, they're going to have expectations to at least compete for a championship that we might not think they are, but that's their aspirations this season. I don't think we're expecting a lot from the Spurs. That should be a W if we were looking at it on paper. Minnesota's a fairly good matchup for us as well. Detroit, they're going to be better this year, but you still favour us with that. And Miami, we certainly competed against them last year in pretty much all 4 games. We didn't obviously win all of them, but I think that road trip out of all of the ones that we've got is pretty favourable compared to some of the others that we've got coming up, especially the one at the start of the season to open it up. But we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, for the longest road trip, and then coming off of that road trip, we've then got a 4-game homestand that takes us into the All-Star weekend. So if we can keep our heads above water, as Philip Rossman-Wright's been saying on his podcast today, if you guys haven't listened to that, which is a really good way of putting it. If the Magic can stay above water up until the All-Star break, I think we're going to be looking really, really positively going into the latter half of the season.
Yeah, I think it's... I would agree with you. It's not the worst of road trips, that longest one we've got. One of the things I noticed with it, it doesn't include any back-to-backs, which is quite unusual for a road trip for us. So, G, got to come to you, mate. We don't have referent at the moment, so this seemed ready-made for you. Television games. The floor is yours.
Right. So before I get onto the television games, one thing I know that Jeff Turner said when we had him on last year when the schedule was released, he said when we asked him about the schedule, he said what they looked at, 41 home games, 41 road games. Yeah, looks fine to me. Everyone's going to have to play the same opponents no matter at what point or whatever. So the better teams will transpire to be higher in the standings. So whilst, looking at it, the first month or so, and we'll get onto that in a bit, does look a little bit daunting. Like Mikey's just said, that road trip in January, February, it's a very winnable sort of run. Anyway, we'll get onto more of that in a bit, I'm sure. So, television games. So then, we are how many more teams? There's 5 teams that have got less games than the Orlando Magic on national television. Now, I say national television, 4 of these games are NBA TV, so I don't even count these as national games. I don't know about you boys, but when you think national games, you want an ESPN game, you want a TNT game, you want Chuck and the TNT boys on talking about it. So we've been given the one. So that's an Oklahoma game in 2024 sometime. Only thing is, it is a Tuesday night. So the good thing is it's a home game, which is nice to see, and obviously it's what we should have had last year with Chet versus Paolo. But I don't know. I feel a little bit agitated. The fact that the rookie of the year, the number 1 overall pick last year, and we get 5 games. You look at San Antonio, they have 19 national games. It's staggering. Just having a quick look at the teams that have got less than us. Toronto have 3, Washington 4. Of course, they're in a bit of a rebuild. The Detroit Pistons have 4, Charlotte have 4. So they're kind of, bottom dwellers. So all in all, I'm a bit disappointed. We've got the NBA TV games. I'll just list them for anybody who hasn't had a look at the schedule. It's the LA Lakers in November. We've got the Atlanta game in Mexico City. But, that really should be a national game anyway, just because of the fact that it is an international game. We've got that, I'm going to call it a play-in game. It's not a play-in game. It's that Boston game in November and then at Golden State. So all in all, pretty disappointed with only having 5. But I am looking forward to that TNT Tuesday game against OKC. And the fact it's at home as well, because last year's, I believe, was supposed to be penciled in OKC.
It was the road game.
So it'll go on.
I was going to say, this kind of sums up what you're trying to say, G. I saw a tweet earlier or a post on X, as we're now apparently calling it. Jalen Green, Kay Cunningham, Paolo Banchero, Tyrese Halliburton, and Scoot Henderson are all going to be on ESPN and TNT combined this season for a total of 6 games. And I failed to put who put the message out there, but they said if you don't see a problem with this, you need to wake up and understand how a big market bias is going to ruin this league for the future, because you got top talent there, and it's not going to be available for the national public in America to actually watch these guys play, which is a bit of a travesty. But it's all about the Lakers, apparently.
I mean, there was a good point made on that tweet that I saw, that somebody said that, look, these teams are losing teams and didn't make either the playoffs or the play-in tournament, which is a good point, until you look and realise that San Antonio have got that number of games that they have. If San Antonio were included within that grouping, the point's completely valid. But them having so many games because of drafting Stickman is ridiculous.
What was it you said in our group yesterday, Paul?
Mr. Overhyped.
Yeah.
Something like that nature.
Yeah, I mean, you were hoping that he might flop.
Oh, yeah. The media overreaction to him, and I feel bad saying this, it's almost making me want him to crash and burn. I'd quite like to see him be a bust because of the overhype around the man. It's not like me at all.
I mean, the only sort of saving grace you've got is they often change the scheduling based upon records, etc. So, if we're, neck and neck going into the last 2 months, then hopefully we'll see a few more national games picked up for the Magic. So, it is what it is, unfortunately. But I'd rather have David and Jeff call the games, to be honest with you. You'd watch it on Bally, wouldn't you? So, it is what it is.
I'm actually starting to understand, G, what it must be like for you and Angus and Barry as fans of Scotland and Wales, with the England bias when it comes to the football. I'm actually starting to understand where you guys are coming from about. At times it feels like for you guys anyone but England. I'm kind of starting to understand that because of this overhyping of Victor Wembanyama. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never thought to say that. I still don't like your anyone but England thing, but there we go, mate. There we go. Right. Okay. So I want to talk about the first 20, the opening 20. As you know, I've written before about how important these games are in deciding your chances of becoming a team in the playoffs. And we have a tough run in that first 20 games, which includes our 4 scheduled in-season tournament fixtures. We open the season at home to Houston and then hit a very early season West Coast trip, which includes our first back-to-back in LA. And we've got 3 in the period of those opening 20 games. So, G, the all-important 20 games, your reaction and thoughts to that opening run?
Well, I'm glad we've got a home game to open the season. We haven't had one of them for a few years now. We've been out at Detroit, at San Antonio last couple of seasons. So that's a good starting point. But I've never seen a team being sent, East or West, whatever conference they're in, so early in the season. And then you've obviously got 2 West Coast trips. We're done by the 6th of January. Which is absolutely unheard of, but it gives us a chance to come together as a team, bond, etc. As you know, and the team will do that on the road, won't they? They'll be in close proximity of one another. So let's hope that happens. It is a tough start, a couple of Western, first. Oh my gosh, the first 7 are all Western Conference opposition. Mm-hmm. If you can go 500 over that course, you'd be happy. You'd think. Then it eases up a little bit. There's a couple of toughies in there. Milwaukee, obviously, a couple of road games. Brooklyn, Chicago twice. Indiana, home to Toronto. Then you've got the NBA champion Denver Nuggets come in. The Celtics. And then a couple more winnable ones. Charlotte, Washington, Brooklyn, who I don't particularly rate, to be honest with you, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll probably, not Twitter, X, probably notice. So, I mean, I've gone through it myself. I'd have us at 12 and 8. So, as Mikey mentioned earlier, if we can get to a point in January at 500, after January, at 500 or so, and it'd give us every chance to, end the season strongly and get us into good seeding position. But yeah, I'm just so surprised at such a heavy Western Conference opening. And I'm just glad us boys didn't book to go this November, because you'd be absolutely gutted, wouldn't you? 2 weeks in Florida and you might get to watch 2 games.
Yeah, mate. I looked at the schedule and the dates that we all had last season. I was over there for 3 weeks, and in that period of time, we would have got 3 games this year, whereas there were 5 last year, and we had a fair number of road games in that period as well. Yeah, it's definitely different. It's definitely a different feel to that one. Mikey, any follow up on that?
Yeah, I didn't. I spent all afternoon putting all the games on our website and going through the dates. So you kind of get a feel for how you think the schedule's going to play out when you have to go through every game and figure it out. But just piggybacking off of what G's just said, 11 of those 20 games to open the season are against teams that didn't make the playoffs last year. So if we want to look at this at a positive side of it, that's one thing. That's not including Brooklyn, who G's just mentioned we don't expect to be a playoff team like they were last year, and a lot of that was because they still had KD for a large part of that before he got traded. Boston, we've got in there as part of the in-season tournament as well as that. We had their number last year, winning 3 out of 4. I think we all expect the Raptors to drop off a little bit. Indiana's favourable. The Bucks is going to be a tough one. Dallas didn't make the playoffs last year. The Lakers scraped in. The Jazz didn't make it. Now, that's not to say these teams aren't going to improve on last year, because I expect some of them will. But if we're just basing it off of last year, there are games in there that we should win. So if we can come out of that first 20 games and still be in and around 500, I think that's a really good start to the season for me. For a team that's still young, that's still got to find their way. And the fact that you've got to start road heavy might actually bring this team together more quickly than we think. So, yeah, if we're looking at it from a positive point of view, there's certainly a good number of teams there that we could get some wins against at the start of the season.
I also want to ask you, mate, about the scheduling for the in-season tournament that sits in that period. We've got the 2 away games first, then we finish with both home court fixtures. Between those home court fixtures, we host the defending champions Denver in that spell as well. So, mate, what's your thoughts on how the scheduling's landed with those games?
I'm quite happy with it, mate, if I'm honest. If you look at it, like I said, we're starting with Brooklyn on the road. Then you travel to Chicago for 2 back-to-back games with a day or 2 in between.
Yep. Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah.
So you've got some rest in between that. Indiana on the road's going to be a good battle. Then you travel home. You got Toronto. You're going to want to have your wits about you playing Denver, and we really played well against them last year. We might not have got a win against them, but
I thought we beat them on the home.
Oh, did we? Did we beat them at home?
Yeah, I'm sure we did, because Kyle, View from the Cheap Seats, put a video up, and he was there. He was there for that one.
There's too many games to remember.
And I think we kind of did take the W in that game.
It was the road game. We pushed them right down to the wire, and Jokic hit the 3, didn't he, at the end of the game? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. So Denver's a good game, and then you got Boston to close it out. So no, I'm pretty happy with that, to be honest with you. And I'm going to mention Philip Rossman-Reich again, who I was listening to earlier, and he said a good mindset for the Magic to go into this sort of stretch of games is think of it like a playoff series. You've got a 7-game playoff series, and you've got to be really focused in those 7 games. And there's no real let up, because you're playing 4 games of those at the in-season tournament. Now you've got the Nuggets thrown in the middle of there as well. So yeah, they're all going to be really competitive games. So I think that's a good thing for us to shape how we want the rest of the season to play out for me.
Gary, your reaction to the in-season tournament? Are you liking seeing Boston as the final game?
I'll be honest. I agree with Mikey that I think we've done them well in the draw for this pre-season tournament, because G's already alluded to Brooklyn might not be as good as what they were this time last year. They're not. It's not like you're looking at Brooklyn and going, "Oh, Kevin Durant's Brooklyn" anymore. And that's no disrespect, but it's not the same force now. How they'll do this season, watch them win the title after we've said this. But in real seriousness, it's not where you go, "Oh no, it's Brooklyn." It's kind of like Brooklyn's really now a team who we've got to finish above if we want to make the playoffs and the play-in. So I think we can beat them. I think we can beat Chicago. I honestly think we're as good as, if not better than, the Bulls. I think we're better than the Raptors. And I'm still going to stand by what I said previously. I think Toronto will blow it up, and I do think Pascal Siakam will be shipped out at some point during the season. And that brings us to Boston on the 24th. And the word out of Boston that I've seen, and I don't really follow the Celtics that closely, is that Porzingis has got plantar fasciitis.
You said about this in the group, didn't you?
Yeah, that's we're in August now, and we're talking about November. But we're also talking about, this is an injury you have to manage well. And you're talking about a guy whose story of his career has been injuries. And they've got to manage this now. Like, the season hasn't started. If Porzingis didn't have these injuries, he's a Wembanyama, and he's in your Giannis conversation and your Dirk comparisons, and all of this is happening. But the problem is injuries with Kristaps Porzingis. So am I being exaggerated here or not? I don't know. But will Porzingis be fit for that game?
Well, he's pulled out of the World Cup squad, hasn't he?
He has, but it's a funny. I've had this injury and I've done the rehab for it, and you have got to do it right. And it's not
Yeah.
just get your foot sorted and your shoes sorted. It's manage your calves and your tendons and things like that. And we know that he's struggled with leg injuries before. So
Absolutely.
Porzingis is a player where I'm looking at and going, are Boston going to try and manage that player, and how will that fit schedule as well of how they
Well,
use
we saw last season it was Wendell, wasn't it, for ourselves
Yeah.
with this injury.
Yeah.
But I said
And
straight
we
away
know the
when
games that he missed and some extended periods as a result of that.
But when that happened last year, Paul, I immediately said on the pod, I've had that injury, and this is not an overnight thing, and you've
Yeah.
got to manage it. And I'm not 6'11", so it's a bit different, really. This, when you think of the pressure that's going through that. So I know it's November, but if I was the Boston Celtics, I'd be thinking, how do we get 60 games out of Kristaps Porzingis? Because if we get 60 games out of him, you're going to get all-star production if he's managed right. So am I perhaps being optimistic? Maybe. But I'm looking at that and going, will Porzingis play? And I'm saying that as a Magic fan with Jonathan Isaac on the team. So,
Well, let's be honest. You have to. It's not just the 82 game schedule. It's all the day-to-day training and sessions that they have, and every game they're out warming up long before the actual tip-off. There's considerably more impact on the player than just that 48 minutes of scheduled basketball.
you've got to manage it. You've got to manage it.
Yeah, it's a big one. Now, I'm going to come to you again, Gary, for this. We're going to talk about December through January. And I think it was you, Mike, who described it in the group as potentially a season-defining period for us. So, Gary, will you talk us through your thoughts on this period and any reactions to it that you've got?
If you're watching this on YouTube, I've done a stats dive this afternoon.
Oh, look at that.
I just pulled the notes up.
Good man.
So we're looking at December and January. And as we've all said, this could be make or break. The period I would look at as make or break, and others might disagree with this, and that's fine, is from the 3rd of December against Brooklyn all the way through to the 7th of January against Atlanta.
Yeah.
So we've got a 15-game span there. I expect us to beat the Wizards. That's the game we play before this. The first game we play in December is the 2nd of the 12th versus the Wizards, and I expect us to beat them. And I'll be really disappointed if we've got a losing record or a 2-2 record against Washington this season. But if I was a fantasy sports owner, like, I might be looking at Kyle Kuzma this year as somebody I'd pick up because he might play heavy minutes. It starts on the 3rd of the 12th for me. And we've got Brooklyn, and I've highlighted that one because I expect Brooklyn to be a team who are not going to be great, but they might be a team around us for playing. Last year, we were 1-2 against Brooklyn. And this goes all the way down to the 7th of the 1st, where we're playing the Hawks, who we were 1-3 against last year. Again, if Atlanta's squad remains as it is, and we have a 1-3 record against them at the end of the season, or a 0-4, it hasn't gone well, and it hasn't gone to plan. Of those 15 games over a season, the teams we play in that period are Brooklyn, Cleveland, double against Boston, Miami, Milwaukee, Indiana, Washington, Philly, New York, Phoenix, Golden State, Sacramento, Denver, and ending with Atlanta. Season series, 50 games, we were 19-50. So we need to improve that form on those 15 games. Now, we can swing that form because I think coming out of those games, the 15 games, we've got to be looking at being 8-7 minimum. And the teams where we're looking at it is can we beat Brooklyn? We didn't do well against Cleveland last year. So we were 0-4. Boston, we've got a back-to-back. We actually shocked them because we were a bit of a matchup nightmare, but they have added Porzingis, as we know. Can we split that? We've got Miami and Milwaukee coming in. I don't like us against the Bucks, but I do think we can get something off the Heat. We were 1-3 against them. I don't think, as it stands, without Dame Lillard, Miami are necessarily a team that we should be saying we can't beat them. So that's winnable. Indiana, they're a team like us, rebuilding young, so we should be looking at them. we should be looking at knocking off the Wizards. We're at Philadelphia, who were 1-3. That should be a game where we're usually going, that's going to be tough. But James Harden's doing James Harden things now. They're a better coached team, much better coached team, but James Harden could, you never know, he could sit this out or he could force a trade. Something's going to happen there. It's going to blow up. Harden's even talking about how good China is to him and stuff and wanting to play there at some point. But him and
he's in danger of talking himself out of the league, mate.
But he's doing what he does.
Yes,
he's doing what he does. So are Philadelphia what you'd expect them to be? The Knicks, that's a tough ask. Phoenix, at Phoenix is a tough ask. Golden State and Sacramento and Denver, 4 on the bounce. Phoenix, Golden State, Sacramento, Denver, they are big. We've got to get one of those, and we've got to knock the Hawks off. So I'm thinking we've got to beat the Knicks, we've got to knock the Hawks off, and we've got to pick something up in one of those Western games to give ourselves any chance. If we go and have an abominable record in that period, we are setting ourselves up badly for the rest of January, which is equally as tough. So it's a 15-game span from me, and it starts against Brooklyn and it goes all the way to Atlanta. So how well we manage those 15 games, I think, could dictate a lot, because I looked at them and I was like, we could go, like, if you were being really pessimistic, you could go 3-12, and you don't want that, because we go 3-12, we've given ourselves a problem. So I think we've got to be 7 or 8 wins in there, and that's how I think we can get them. So yeah, that was my little stats deep dive.
Good, mate. It's good. I like it. Gee, what's your thoughts on that period?
Yeah, just exactly really what Gary said. You know, you've got to take care of business against teams you should be beating. Your Washingtons, your Brooklyns, your Indianas, potentially your Philadelphia's, OKC, the latter part of the January. And then you've got to try and pick up a couple more, you know, at Dallas. We could win that. You know, if you split with Phoenix, we obviously did very well last season against Golden State, beat them twice. If you can nick one against them, they're obviously, you know, they're still a powerhouse team, aren't they? But if you pick one up, then you obviously, you know, you can lose one just to stay at 500. So, like Gary said, you're keeping your head above water with regard to these. But interestingly, there are 2 more games to be added to this December, January sort of section we're talking about, because we play the Brooklyn Nets in Brooklyn on the 3rd of December. And I believe it all depends where you're at in this whole tournament, which is just causing so much headaches, to be honest with you.
Did anybody actually understand how the scheduling was going to work on that? Who we might actually play?
I think, no, not really. But we can either have a game, I can't remember the date, I haven't got it in front of me, on the 6th and the 8th or something like that, or the 5th and the 7th. I'm not sure, but, you know, you're just hoping it's a bottom dweller, don't you, just to help us with the scheduling. I suppose if we did qualify, then obviously you're going to get a tougher team. Is that how it works?
It depends, mate. It depends on who, you know, you could find Golden State or the Lakers just aren't bothered about that competition, and the likes of ourselves and Detroit are using it as a stepping stone to gain experience. We don't know yet what reactions players are going to have and teams are going to have to that competition. I think it was Jeff, wasn't it, when he was on, who said the way you motivate players in his experience is offer money, and that's what they've done. So we shall see as to it's
a strange one, isn't it? It's just like we get. It's like the Coca-Cola Cup, isn't it? The League Cup. Nobody really cares in the football, do they? But obviously, it all falls in part with the regular season, and you know you need as many wins as you can. So, no, it's a very tough stretch, though. Very tough stretch.
People care when they get the final.
Absolutely, Paul. Absolutely. As soon as there's a trophy on the line. So, G, I want to talk to you about March, because potentially this is a critical one. If the Magic are fighting for a playoff spot, or, you know, let's hope even better, a playoff seed late in the year, that 8-game homestand mid-March to early April could be pivotal. Yeah, could be pivotal. I'll put my teeth in and get my brain working. Starts the home stretch on March 17th against the Raptors. and concludes April the 1st against the Blazers. Both are teams that missed the playoffs last year. Other opponents in that stretch, we've got the Warriors, Clippers, and Grizzlies. So, G, thoughts on that home stand?
Yeah, I mean, we're going back to, the whole December, January thing. We just need to, like Mikey said, stay, head above water. And then this gives us a great big platform to propel ourselves here. If you look back to the beginning of March, you've got Utah, Detroit, at Charlotte, at Washington, at New York versus Indiana versus Brooklyn, Toronto twice, home and away, Charlotte. You could see us putting 6 wins together there straight. And then it does get tougher, like you mentioned, Paul. New Orleans, you don't know what you're going to get. Will Zion be playing? I was fortunate enough to see the Magic beat New Orleans back in January this year. They're very capable, the Pelicans. And you just don't know who you're going to get. The Kings obviously playing very well last season. Golden State again. You might get Kawhi or Paul George. You don't know with the Clippers. The Grizzlies, unless Ja Morant's suspended again. There's a lot of ifs and buts. And this part of the season as well, you're going to have injuries come into play. So the guys mentioned earlier, Gary said, depth is absolutely key. And, touch wood, we don't get any injuries at all. There are injuries going to occur, just you don't know where, do you? So it's just being in the right place, the right time, making sure you can take advantage of it when it occurs. But no, that March-April stretch, it sets you up nicely to propel you. Good couple of tough games in there towards the end as well. So, yeah, it's a nice little homestand, shall I say.
Gary, anything to add to that?
It's a more general point, really. Just everything G said, I agree with. I know we've spoken about how the schedule looks when we first glanced at it, and we looked at the start, and we've looked at how December and January can go. But it's interesting. Twitter user HP Basketball said that the Magic actually have it's calculated that we've got the easiest run from the All-Star to the end of the season, where we've got 15 home games, 12 road games, only 4 back-to-backs. And in terms of travel, we've got the 3rd fewest miles of any team. Yeah. So if we're in a good position, and it's like the theme of tonight where we're talking about not going into these runs, keeping our head above water. If we can be in that position going into the All-Star break, as long as we stay healthy, we're putting ourselves in a positive position post-All-Star game rather than playing catch-up. So I think how the first part of the season goes is vital, because if we can establish the right habits, the right culture, people can be breaking out, etc., we could put ourselves in a really nice position with a young, energetic team.
Well, Mike, it was... sorry, Gary. Mike, it was yourself, wasn't it, in the group who said that looking at the schedule, you've got the kind of feeling of the 2018-19 season where that run set us up for opportunity to get into the playoffs if the second half of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing with that home stand as well was, other than the last 2 games, you got the Clippers and the Grizzlies back to back, but other than that, they've got at least a day off in between games. So they're going to be in Orlando for a good 2-week stretch. I think it's 15 or 16 days. So it's also a good period if you do have some injuries that you're at home, where you get your players back rehabbing and getting healthy towards the end of the season. If you are in the playoff hunt or in the play-in hunt, then you've got a good chance of getting everybody back towards the end of the season, hopefully.
Now, Gary, how do you fancy... Sorry, G, you look like you're about to say something, mate.
I'm just having a look at my notes, and I put something in, actually, that I forgot to mention about the January part. So on
Too late.
well, no, this is quite important. On
Go for it, man.
four separate occasions, we've got 3 games in 4 nights, just in 1 month.
Yeah, January.
And you've seen the teams there, and we've read them out, a couple of minutes ago. But my gosh, absolutely brutal. I don't think I've ever seen that on a schedule in a very long time. Anyway,
it's good. Actually, it's actually quite nice. It segues into what I was going to ask Gary about. that final 3 games of the season, that season close, if we need something, how are you feeling about it? Milwaukee twice and the Sixers in between them.
I know that's where I went straight to when the
It
schedule
is.
dropped. I went, how does
That's why I
this?
asked you the question, pal.
Well, my thing.
I think you put in the Twitter in our WhatsApp group yesterday. I went straight here, so it was a no-brainer that you were having this one.
Yeah, it's one of those where I would love to be in the position where we've sewn up a playoff berth, and it doesn't matter about the play-in, and we've got, say, ideal world like 5th seed, say, locked in. That would be fine. But we know that we're realistically dealing with. We're probably looking at the play-in is where we're targeting. And I had a conversation from the Orlando UK account with Liam Radbourne, who one of the UK members, and really this is not where we want to be if it's where everybody's got something to play for. Where if we look at those 2 teams, we had a 1-7 record combined against them last year. So I don't want to be in a position where we have to win those games or go 2 out of 3, for example. Liam made a point which I also thought about and agreed with massively, is we've got to hope that the season's set. And if it's something where Milwaukee's locked in as 1 or 2, or even if Milwaukee's just like, we're happy with the 2nd seed and how matchups go, you can see the Bucks resting players, because what they won't want is Giannis or Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday in particular getting injured, because we've seen what injuries did to the Bucks in the playoffs last year. So that might play in our favour. And then the other team is Philadelphia. And Philadelphia, on paper and with their coach, have all of the talent to be a top 3 team in the East. We know this. But as said earlier, what will Philadelphia look like by All-Star break? Because honestly, it could be. We know James Harden has it in his locker, and it sounds like the Andy Harden podcast tonight. But James Harden has it in his locker to sit out, to disrupt a team, to basically throw his conditioning out the window, etc., until he gets what he wants. And it's a real shame, I would say, if you're a Philly fan now. I've got a friend who's a Philly fan. It's a real shame when you look at it that they need an efficient 20 points, 10 assists James Harden to go alongside Joel Embiid. That's what they need. And instead, James Harden's legacy possibly might be forgetting everything he did in Houston when he carried that team. And it was like Tracy McGrady-esque in the new NBA system. He carried that team. He nearly got them to the finals. One of the best scorers and weapons that you've seen, who's going to possibly be remembered for a look at how he messed up the Brooklyn Nets and look at how he messed up the Philadelphia 76ers, who are 2 teams that had the talent to win a title. That could be James Harden's legacy, and that's a shame. That really is a shame.
Well, Mikey, I'm going to ask you a similar question about these final 3, because it was yourself who put this in as well. How are you feeling about those 3 games? I was going to ask you about the point that Liam had made to Gary around if positions are locked in.
I was talking, so I'm going to change the subject slightly, in that Becky's been away for 3 days. She went out to see our friends Luke and Louise for the weekend, and they're actually in Orlando at the end of November into December. So they're going to be going to a couple of these games. And Becky was like, "Oh, who do you think they should go and see, or who do you think they'd like to see?" Or I was like, honestly, this season, if we were all going, I don't think, other than maybe Washington, there's any team that I wouldn't want to see this year. I think every single team has got a player that you want to see, or there's a team that you want to see. And I think there's going to be so much competition this year for places that I'm not convinced that things are going to be locked in with a few games to go. I think there's going to be a lot of seeding that's going to go right down to the last couple of games of the season. So, yeah, it would be fantastic if we went into that last game at home against Milwaukee and Giannis is sitting and Chris Middleton's sitting. But I'm not convinced that these teams want to do that. And if they're healthy, then they're going to want to keep their momentum going into the playoffs as well, and staying finely tuned as well. Whether Philly are there, whether they can make a deal and get rid of James Harden and bring somebody else in, I don't know. But that's two of the three best teams in the East you're looking at there, Philly and Milwaukee, as they are. If nothing else changes, so they couldn't have kept much worse, really, could it? Then maybe throw the Denver Nuggets in there, but
On
it's
paper,
yeah,
it doesn't look good, does it?
no,
But
not at the moment.
that's the thing. You don't know what you're going to have at that point. I remember a couple of seasons back, be about so it'd be 2017-18 season. I was looking at going across for perhaps the Easter period, and in that period we'd have had a road game in Miami. I think we'd got home game against Miami, and I think they were up in New York and possibly playing Brooklyn as well in the period that we could have gone. And we looked at it and went, yeah, that's on paper, that was really good. But you expected that Miami by then would perhaps be locked in and, not playing everybody. You kind of looked and thought Brooklyn the same, because at that point they were playing quite nicely. New York, you expected them to be cut adrift and playing for nothing. So we actually decided upon travelling at a different period. It didn't work out like that, as it turned out. The games would have been relatively okay. We were out of it, but a couple of the games would have been relatively okay. So it just shows that you don't always know. You don't always know what you're going to get. But yeah,
we just don't know till ball's tipped and the season gets underway how it's going to shake out. I mean, it's all theoretical at this point, and I'm sure we're going to do our predictions in a couple of weeks' time as we get closer, probably after the World Cup, I expect. But
yeah,
at the moment, I mean, you could argue there's 28, 29 really competitive teams this year that are all going to want to get better.
Well, I think it was the pod. Did you miss that one where we talked about the Eastern Conference teams?
Yeah.
And I know that as we were doing that, we were talking and finding that really there weren't that many teams that you were looking and saying, yeah, they're just not a good team, or they don't have any potential. Coming back to your point again about the number of good players that are within teams this season, it's going to be a very competitive season. I want to ask you all about, after this schedule release, whether you're feeling more or less confident about the season. And without saying how many wins I'm not asking you to say 41, 42 wins or whatever, but whether you see us having more wins than the over-unders, which seem to put us around at the 36.5 wins mark, tied with Toronto and Chicago. So, G, we'll come to you first, mate. What's your thoughts on that?
Over. Easy over. I'll give you 41 and 39, my friend, out of the 80 games. I've already gone through it all, so not very confident with that. It's good to see that they can't sort of separate us with Toronto and Chicago, because the Bulls fans think they're very good, and they're very not. They're on the downward, aren't they? And then obviously Toronto have had what's that?
Yeah, it's every week. It's just like, who can I upset today? Let me just pull a number out of the hat. Chicago, it's your turn.
They're all right, but there's nothing to shout about, is there? Really?
It's great. Never change, pal. Never change. Yeah, never change, mate.
And obviously Toronto have lost Van Fleet. Obviously lost their coach. So I think we're better than both of them, but I might be wearing my blue tinted glasses again.
I think the Pacers were at 37.5.
They were.
So that group of four teams that I think when we were doing the Eastern Conference thing, we all put ourselves kind of in and around there that Chicago would be fighting for the play. And so you're feeling that nothing's changed for you confidence-wise following the schedule release. You're happy with it?
Happy, cool. Yeah, happy with it. I think we've got a good squad, depth and everything. So I think we're ready to take the next step.
Gary, your opinion, mate.
Everybody healthy, I'll say over.
Yep.
I think we're a 500 team, around about that point. Statistically, I'm saying if healthy, we saw the impact of Jonathan Isaac. I think it was 11 games he played last year, won 9. and then he had to sit during another one where if he had played, would have probably won that one as well. We saw the impact of the team when though everybody was healthy and we had a guard rotation and we didn't start off as we did. So I think there is a 500 team in there. The threats to it are that I think Indiana and Detroit are coming with us up that list. I think Cade Cunningham's for real. I think Indiana's got really good personnel there. I think Charlotte are a surprise package of the league if they've got LaMelo fit and they bed Miles Bridges back in. I'm with G. I think the Bulls' situation of point guard could really cost them. And I think that the Raptors are one step off going into a rebuild because I think I keep saying it. I think Siakam's going to go. I think OG could go as well, and I think they're going to start looking at what Scotty Barnes can do as their franchise player. Which I'm not going to comment on that, but I think they could go into a.
Oh, go on, comment. It's funny.
Oh, come on! You may as well follow in G's footsteps.
I stand by what I said. I don't think Scotty Barnes was Rookie of the Year when he won it, and I don't think that was his second season sample, he didn't play like a guy where you'd say you're on the verge of stardom now. He's got the physical tools to do it, but that jumper has to improve. We've heard it all the time from people going in on guys like Markel Fultz saying about the jumper, the jumper, the jumper. Well, it also goes for Scotty Barnes. He adds a jumper, and you've got a dangerous, dangerous player there. But he has to add a jumper if he's going to be first option.
And Mr. Clark, I've got to ask you the same question.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take the over. I think if this number was maybe 38 or 39, I'd have to really think about it. If it was the over-under, I think it's set too low. But we also got to remember we only had two teams that finished below us in the league last year, in the Eastern Conference last year. So we've still got to look at this. We're being optimistic, I think, is the best way of putting this. We're still got there's a lot to do this season. There is a lot of players that still need to have a big improvement. We need to take a big leap this year. And to go from, 22 wins to 34 was a really good first year improvement. But this next leap is going to really set us up for the next couple of years. I would like to say we were in and around the 40 win mark. I think the East is going to be so competitive this year that I think it's going to be hard for a lot of teams to separate themselves from another. And we could be looking at just like half a game could be the difference between getting in the play-in and not getting in the play-in. It could be the difference between getting in the 6th seed and just falling back into the play-in. I think it's going to be really tight, and I think the wins are going to be shared more evenly with a lot of these teams in the East this year. So, I'll take the over at 36, but I think, if I'm being honest at the moment, I think 38 to 40 is kind of where I'm sort of setting my sights at the moment. I'd love it to be a bit more than that, obviously, but I think if we're being realistic, another maybe 5 or 6 wins on what we did last year in an Eastern Conference is going to be really, really competitive. I mean, I was completely wrong last year, so what do I know?
How about you, Paul?
When the schedule came out, my initial reaction was, this is awful. This is awful. And I felt less confident about the season. As sitting down and preparing this for the podcast tonight, and you look at little things that other people have been writing and taking ideas for dropping into this, started to feel a little bit more confident and feel that that over-under is, as Mikey said, set too low. I'm not saying I'm as confident as Eugene. I agree entirely with Gary that fit, I feel that there is a 500 team in there. At this moment in time, I'm kind of that same figure as Mikey, 39, 40. If we can keep fit, if we can keep healthy, if we see Jonathan Isaac able to contribute in the way that he did for those short period, and everything that I'm hearing from people and friends within that organisation is that he's in the best shape of his life. We'll see. We'll see. Let's hope so. Then I could see that translating to another couple of wins. But at this moment in time, I'm sort of that 39-40 number, which is still an increase. And I still think, and that I think in this year's Eastern Conference, which is going to be an absolute brawl of a bar fight, that should be enough to see you in a strong position in the East. So yeah, I think we'll be somewhere there or thereabouts with that number.
So we're all within 3 games. So we're all.
Yeah. Now, before we finish, there was something we were going to do, but we're going to leave it for another week. We'll come to it, but I just wanted to revisit one that Gary's been throwing out these teams for opinions of best 5 players drafted outside of the lottery. We did say that I needed to do one from my period of time, from the perspective of since I became a fan of the team, which is season 2013, 14, 20, around 2014. Wow. It was quite hard work, I've got to say. So the best 5 I could come up with for players drafted outside of the lottery was, at point guard, I went Cole Anthony. Shooting guard, 1 for G, Evan Fournier. Small forward, Aaron Aflalo. That helped that he came back from the 2018 season. Otherwise, that position was an absolute nightmare to fill. Power forward, Tobias Harris. And at centre, Vooch. These were some of the other players that we had the opportunity of putting into that lineup. So honourable mentions, if you can call it that, to Mo Wagner, Jonathan Simmons, Ken Birch, Serge Ibaka, Jason Smith, and Dwayne Dedman.
Jason Smith.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, mate. There's some good role players in there, but it's not what you want as a starting 5, is it? Some of them.
Paul,
so, Gary, go on.
I am so disappointed in you.
Go on. No Melvin Frazier.
No Melvin Fraser Jr. in there.
Mate, if I'm doing it properly, I've got to do it properly, mate. I mean, that would have been interesting, a worst 5 that we've drafted or that we've had that's played for us in that period of time. That could be some.
I'm pretty sure Melvin Fraser Jr. isn't the worst one, not the worst 5 on the list either.
I'd probably stick in there. I was just never a fan.
I was just never a fan, mate.
Yeah, was he 2012, 2013 or so? Yeah, I didn't like
it. We might have to have a play with that one. So, Gary, as it was you who threw it out, what's your reaction to that 5, mate? What do you think of it?
I'm actually quite impressed. I don't think it's a bad lineup. I think you've got obviously you've got Vooch in there and you've got Cole in there. Tobias Harris was good for us as well. Fournier and Aflalo, they'll do a job. That could, when you were saying about what it was going to come up with, that's a lot better than I actually feared immediately. But you've got the GOAT there and you've got Vooch there, so it's all good.
I've got to be honest, it was better than I thought. And shooting guard, I knew G would be happy.
Oh, I saw that it was like the face just lit up like a card of Christmas tree, didn't it?
He's not even one of my favourite players ever. I just liked him, and he was just good for what he was asked to do. In fairness,
what's your son's name?
Evan.
I rest my case, your worships.
And my wife picked that.
Yeah, all right.
Genuine.
I know she did, pal. Okay, everybody, listen, we're going to leave it at that for this week. Thank you, as always, for watching and listening. Please hit the subscribe button on YouTube on our channel, Orlando Magic UK. It doesn't sound like much, but you wouldn't believe how much it helps us. So please do it if you haven't already done it. I know we bang on about it every week, but it's something we really appreciate if you do. So like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Threads, X, Twitter, whatever it's called, and they're all at Orlando Magic UK. So until next time, from Geraint, Gary, Mikey, go Magic, and that's all, folks.